Joining us now to discuss is Malta's Finance Minister, Edward Scicluna. He's making a stop here in New York before heading down to Washington to join his global counterparts. Thank you, Minister Scicluna, for joining. There's a similar problem with Malta that there is for all of the European countries, in the sense that you're your own economy, you're the finance minister, but you also have to be European in outlook, and you can't advocate very much for trade to go to Malta or not. But you must have some very strong feelings about whether the European Union keeps its trade ties with the likes of the United States.
Yes, it is a concern. Of course, the different countries are at different stages of the positive outlook, which overall is still positive, with growth still on in most countries, something we haven't seen for quite a number of years, and the fact that unemployment is still falling. But obviously, looming behind all this is the trade issues, which we are concerned with. Of course, it is a concern because we've seen throughout history that it matters a lot for global trade, for European trade. I mean, for small countries who have an open economy, in other words, they're relying on trade, it is a concern. Not directly, but indirectly, it will could lead to trade wars, which nobody wants, really.
Well, of course, there's the waiver on tariffs on aluminum and steel, but what if our president, President Donald Trump, decides not to extend those waivers?
Yes, but, you know, I mean, you can start with one object and the other, but the point is you are going to expect a retaliation, a reaction. And the European has shown in no uncertain terms that it intends. In fact, it chose, the list, which hurts more, bourbon, whiskey, Levi's, and so on and so forth. But it's not the detail which matters. The fact is the concept, and that's why we have more global issues to go forward and grow, and keep financial stability. We are sort of. I mean, I don't call them games, but we are indeed playing games because they are retaliatory. And history has shown that each country in turn will increase, barriers all over, trade will fall, unemployment will increase. So I'm not saying that this will happen, but the risk is there. And if we play with that, I think what one would be expecting is not that positive at all.
Finance Minister, will the EU offer concessions to gain an exemption from these Trump tariffs?
Well, that's a difficult decision for the EU to take, because it could go one way and say, look, I'm fine, so, the rest can look after itself. Fine, yes, very, very short term, and it will save us and give us some space. But that is not, I think, what we're really after. I think because the other option is to go for the WTO rules rather than break them, but respect them. So that's another route. It's a big decision for the EU to take. And personally, I would go for the WTO, getting exemption, for a region because we are allies, is really skirting the real issue. The real issue is that can you, have a declining industry, prep it up in the long term or permanently just with tariffs? And the answer, economic history has shown the answer is no. So we've built up the WTO. Let's respect its rules. Let's abide by them. If we have issues, we'll go to that organization. If it's not strong enough, we'll strengthen it and so on. But we need to, go through multilateral approach rather than a bilateral approach.
Mm-hmm.
Finance Minister, the other area of contention is digital taxation. It's been proposed by the EC that revenues of digital, big tech giants could be taxed to the tune of 3%. It seemed to have been met with a lukewarm response from EU leaders at the last summit. Is this the sort of measure that needs to be applied globally, not just at a local level?
And there is a parallel here as well, because as far as international taxation, corporate taxation, we always look up to the international organization, which has been there studying, and lately with BEPS report, which is quite comprehensive report about reducing tax avoidance and profit shifting and so on, which is the OECD. Now, that is the way to go. Now, to go for a quick fix, as in fact is being called, it is just that, a quick fix. Who would want a quick fix and ignoring the US, if not, worsening the situation of good relationship there, ignoring China, and go for a quick fix on this digital tax. So Malta, like quite a growing number of ministers in the council, are in favor for a more long-term approach, using the OECD. Now, the answer of the big countries like France and so on say, it will take time, but to go for a quick fix in order and in this particular case, without really wanting, you're going to hit American companies. It would not look good in the current tiff between EU and the US.
The European Commission says Malta is going to grow 5.6% this year, more than double some of the other European countries. In fact, real GDP growth might be 7.2%. How are you doing it? And would you then take in more migrants, for example, as a sort of a give back, seeing as you can obviously afford to do that?
If I start from the end, we need them. In other words, well, all people are migrants coming from outside, whether irregular, we call them irregular from North Africa, but also from Europe. Those are regular ones, because they have every right to come in Malta. And Malta can't grow at those rates without relying on input. And otherwise, the labour market would have heated up already, would have had wage inflation, while, in fact, at the moment, inflation is only 1.2%. which shows that there is a high elasticity of labour coming from Europe and also outside, which has helped the economy grow. The economy grew because we undertook reforms. We had the lowest female participation in Europe. We had to have tax breaks. We provided free childcare centres and managed to get the participation. And other supply issues. We lowered income tax and shifted it to consumption taxes, and thereby reduced the burden on work, making work pay. And slowly, we started attracting investment.
Many different ways to skin a cat, as they say.
Well, Minister, yes, but Malta is attractive for now on this digital, so being attractive, it counts a lot.
Minister Scicluna, Finance Minister of Malta, thank you for joining us in New York today. Let's check in now on the First Word News.